Okay. So we began with the kasha, why is it written Stam Vayikra on Moshe, and only later it tells it was Hashem. Begin from the beginning and say who's calling, and then just mention that the same one who called spoke with him. So in order to understand that, plus a few other inyanim, I'm going to begin with a story, a famous story written in the Sichos of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tovshin, and it tells the story of what the Alter Rebbe answered to the Tzemach Tzedek on the day that he took him into the Cheder the first time. As you know, the Tzemach Tzedek grew up by the Alter Rebbe. His father passed away when he was a very firstborn child. His father passed away, and he was brought up by the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe took him into Cheder with all the ceremonies that are well known, and the custom by Yidden was in those days, and to this day it remains a custom, the first pasukim that you teach a new child who's coming into Cheder in the Chumash are in Vayikra. At the beginning, the first psukim in Vayikra, those are not Bereshis and not Shmois, no Vayikra. So the reason for that, the different tamim are given for that, but this is not the place to go into it. Suffice to say, that's a minhag vasik ma'id vayidin to teach the child the first psukim of the Chumash, davka from the beginning of Sefer Vayikra. So they showed the Tzemach Tzedek this potik Vayikra. I don't know if you've noticed in your Chumashim, but it's written Vayikra with a small aleph.
Yeah.
As the one on, there are three different types of oisias. There's what we call, three different types of oisias. Oisias, Rabrivim, big oisias. Oisias Beinanim, which are middle-sized oisias, what the majority of the whole Torah is written in them. And then there's oisias Zeirim, little oisias, which are beyond in smallness the Beinanim. So this is one of them, Vayikra, it's written with a small aleph. So the Tzemach Tzedek noticed that the aleph was a small one. So he said to the Alter Rebbe, he asked Izeda, why is it a small aleph? And if I'm not mistaken, he was implying, or could be, it's even mentioned in the story, but I don't think so, but maybe it's mentioned in other places, that the first aleph in Divrei Hayomim, the Sefer Divrei, which is the last Sefer of the Nach, begins with the word Odom, and it's referring to Odom Harishon, and it's got a big aleph. It begins with a big aleph. So whatever when it's talking about Odom Harishon, it starts off with a big aleph, and here we're talking that, we'll mention this shortly, who's calling to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he calls Moshe Rabbeinu with a small aleph. So the Alter Rebbe said, he thought about it for a while. It's certain that the Alter Rebbe put his hands like that on the table and he devaked. In Yiddish it's called devaken, to sort of go into a devakas for quite a while. And then he came out of the devakas and he said like this. He said, Odom Harishon was the handwork of Hashem. He was the direct work of Hashem's hands. Yitzir Kabo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he was the perfection of all milas. As we'll mention maybe as we go along, he was the perfection of all milas. So Odom Harishon realized his greatness. And he was a little bit, this is what the Alter Rebbe said, he was a little bit impressed. You know, he thought it over within himself. And he realized that he was aware of his greatness. The Baal Shem Tov was brought in another place, that the Baal Shem Tov added to that slightly, not that he added, because this was the Alter Rebbe speaking, but to that whole general principle, that Adam HaRishon used to be able to go up, because of his greatness, he could go up into the Olam HaSelyonim, into Gan Eden, even Gan Eden HaElyon, where the great tzaddikim were, and he could move around from one heichel, you know, from one big hall to another, at his own decision. He didn't have to ask permission. He can move around freely in the upper world. So the Baal Shem Tov said, how come that Adam HaRishon fell into such a tremendous and a terrible thing called the Chet Eitz Hadas? How does that happen? Yeah, how was a child? Azazah. Here he was, the Yitzhir Kappa, because it's the old famous kasha. How could it possibly happen? So, the Baal Shem Tov said that Adam HaRishon, once when he was moving from one heichel to the other, as Adam HaRishon said, well, that wasn't too bad. You know, that's pretty good. You know, I'm moving from this heichel now to the next heichel. And for a second, Adam HaRishon sort of said, you know, this is quite something. So the Baal Shem Tov said that because of that, that's how he fell into the Chet.
Wow.
Because he sort of realized his own, he was aware of his own greatness, and had a know from it, because of that he fell into the Chet. I would have thought everybody would have fallen off their chest, but anyway, that's pretty hefty going.
Yeah, they fixed the benches so it's easy for us to sit up.
The chairs are too solid, you say.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this comes down to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe says also that the reason why Adam HaRishon fell into the Chet was he was aware of his own greatness, you follow? And he sort of was impressed within himself by his own greatness. However, Moshe Rabbeinu is a different story, says the Alter Rebbe. Moshe Rabbeinu also knew of his greatness, and he knew that he had immense gift, what Hashem had given him. However, Moshe Rabbeinu used that awareness of his greatness to be dafke the honors that's written in Pasha Baloich in Bamidbar, Vayish Moshe honor mikol Adam asher pnei Adam. He was the honor from all people. You know what honor means? Yeah. Humble. He was a humble from all people on the world. So you can learn that in Sutra. You can say he's humbler than everybody, or you can say he was humble from everybody. He learned to kill something for it, and he became humble. So the pure in that is like what the Alter Rebbe said, that Moshe Rabbeinu knew all his great marvels, all his great gifts. He knew everything. But he was of the opinion that had Hashem given them to another person, he would have done immensely better with them than what he did.
How do you know?
He would have done immensely better.
How do you know, though?
How does he know? He just assumed that.
But maybe not.
He just put, no, but he was convinced.
That's his humility.
That's the way it was.
How could he have been convinced?
Oh. So he looked at the situation, put down another mind from the Rebbe Rashab, that he looked at the situation, what's going to be with people as the generations go further. Things are going to not get, people are not going to get bigger and either. And yet, nonetheless, Yidden are going to be able to stand with a Teike from a Shirsh Nefesh and remain Ehrlich Yidden despite everything that's going to happen. But Moshe Rabbeinu saw that, and he believed that was a Teike, but maybe he didn't know. You understand? And here the Alter Rebbe says that he was convinced that had people, anybody, had the milas that he had, they would have done better. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's conviction, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu, knowing the greatness of what he was involved, he was the most humble of all people, and therefore, after by Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a aleph ze'ira, it's a small aleph, and that is the indication of the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu. Tavki, his greatness is expressed in the small aleph, not in the big aleph.
Why is the aleph? Why is the small letter in the Vayikra? Why is the small letter in Vayikra? Shouldn't the small letter be in Moshe?
Why is it small aleph?
Yeah. Why? What versus a small mem?
Why is it in Vayikra, not in the word Moshe?
Yeah.
Well, Moshe doesn't have an aleph.
Oh.
Moshe doesn't have an aleph.
Okay.
And wants to compare that aleph with the aleph of Adam Arishon.
Oh, okay.
So that was written by
Gotcha.
What you could have maybe asked, why wasn't the shin or something in Moshe small? Why was it in the Vayikra? So as we go along, maybe what I have to say will answer that also.
Okay.
However, up to here is the story. So let's now approach this whole thing. That comes along, Rashi tells us something which is very amazing, and I would assume that probably Rashi is busy with the same general question. Why is it just written at the beginning, Vayikra El Moshe, without saying who it was who called him? So it comes along Rashi, and Rashi says that whenever Hashem came to talk with Moshe Rabbeinu, l'kol ha'dibros or l'kol ha'amiros, to any speaking, to any sayings, or l'kol ha'tzivuim, any commandment that Hashem made to Moshe, kodma kriya, Hashem always called Moshe before he spoke to him. So he says, Loshen chibo, and he said, Vayikra is a expression of affection. Chibo. Now the word chibo in Loshen Kodesh is very, avoiding, it's very sort of delicate. Chibo doesn't just mean ahava, otherwise it could be written ahava. Chibo means like a sort of a special affection, a special sort of, what you call lenient you have towards somebody, and he's moitzuchein in your eyes. It doesn't sort of really add up 100% why. You don't really know why he's moitzuchein, and he doesn't either. But there's an amazing sort of connection between, and that's the Lashon Chibo. You follow? So he says, and why did Hashem do that? Every time he spoke to Moshe, he said Vayikra, Loshen shemalachei hashores mishtamshim boy. He said this is the type of language or the type of expression that the angels of service in the Elam Elyenim, they use it. Like we say in the Volotzian, every day we bring it down, V'kor el zeh v'omar. The Malachim, they call one to the other. What do they need to call one to the other? They're tremendously elevated and they're tremendously high individuals. And each one's got his own separate thing. Do what you got to. Ella, they call one to the other before they say what they want to say. And the reason for that is that they have a certain sort of chivo or respect one for the other, and therefore they call one another first before they go ahead with what they really want to say. So he said, so Rashi says, there was a written Vayikra without, maybe, I'm just suggesting, that why does Rashi say he just used an expression, a chibo? Well, that's kilo, a very special thing that's beyond names, Hashem called him Mitzati Etzem Chibur between them, and this was something that went on the whole time. And maybe because something goes on the whole time, and it came from a very delicate level of kesher, what we call chibur, and therefore you need to mention Hashem's name. This was adequate. This was the ongoing thing. Aval lenavi ayom so oilom, to the prophets of the goyim, nigla aleihem beloshan arai. Yeah, what arai means adequate to any old house. That means temporary. Quite often arai, but it means like something that just doesn't have any real, kriyas or meaning to it, and it's just anything that comes up, v'tuma, and it's not a clean thing. Shenema vayikar Elokim el bilon, or vikor Elohim el bilon, that literally Hashem happened to meet up with Bilam and speak with him.
Vayikar is not the same.
Vayikar is also Vayikra, but without an aleph. It's Vayikra, but it's without an aleph. And Vayikar is from Loshen Mikre, it just happened to happen that way. I mean, everything is from Hashem is not just doesn't happen. There's a meaning to everything, but it sort of was done in a way that it looked like that. Vayikra, he just happened to meet up with him. Oh, he banged into him. Oh, I met up with you. I said, listen, Kafka. That's the implication. Well, that throws back to what we said before, that Vayikra, being as is a permanent thing, it always used to be like, and Hashem always called Moshe before he spoke to him, and that was a sign of his inherent affection for him. It was all the time ongoing. Since it was all the time ongoing, didn't need to be necessarily written Hashem's name. Maybe we could suggest it. That's what Rashi's saying, what he's telling us. However, that's for sure, that this Indian of not Hashem's name not being mentioned somehow is covered by this word chibur. It's because of a tremendous, somebody that you got chibur for, let's put it in another language, you were very informal with him, you're very intimate. So there, Hashem was intimate with Moshe Rabbeinu. He called him without saying, listen, this is me, talking, or without the person needing to tell us, who was really speaking. I later become something very specific, which has got to be given over to all Yidden. And he started teaching him all the laws of the Kabbalah. That he has to say who's talking, and that's an official in him. Vayikra is a beautiful, chibur, affectionate type stuff. Comes along the Targum Yonason, and the Targum Yonason, Ben Azir, he says, a whole big arichas here. He says that Moshe Rabbeinu made a whole big kal v'choyma. And Moshe Rabbeinu said when he was on the mountain, he wanted to go up and hear what Hashem said into the cloud, literally, as he didn't go until Hashem called him. It was only possible for him to go when Hashem called him. So he made a big kal v'choyma. He said, what over there, the Kedusha that was on Mount Sinai was only a temporary Kedusha, as a one-on. And he said, yet nonetheless I had to wait, for Hashem till Hashem called me. Here he said, but the Mishkan is only a Kedusha Salem, is going to be all the time, later it's going to be the Beis HaMikdash, is for sure then I shouldn't really go in unless Hashem will call me. If he wants me to go in, he'll call me. And so some people learn, and maybe it's got to do with the fact that the Onan was still there. It was mentioned at the end of last week's Parasha, at the end of Sefer Shmois. Others learned that the Onan was there, and the Onan already gone away. But nonetheless, Moshe knew that Hashem was there, Bein Hakruvim on the Onan. He didn't want to go in, or whatever. But he didn't go in immediately because he learned a kal v'choyma from Har Sinai. Well, that's like answering the question, but it doesn't really answer it. Why did Hashem not mention the Shem Havaya? Why did he just call him without a name, Mami? So, whatever approach is made to this question, it remains a little bit not clear why Hashem didn't mention his name. And maybe Rashi is hinting to that with the word chibor. That's something very, very high and very delicate. Anyway, let's now sort of go a bit further and examine, what we could suggest is really occurring here. In the light of the fact that this week's Parsha is not only Parsha Vayikra, it's also Parsha Zocher. And we have here a Goring Bal Koiri, and he will tell us what's written in Parsha Zocher.
Okay.
You have to look it up.
No. to remember to destroy Amalek.
Oh, very nice. You have to remember the Zeicha of Amalek, Almanas, to bring to Timcheh. It should be completely wiped out, the Zera of Amalek. So what's going on? This is very puzzling, business. If you don't want Amalek in the world, then, why did you make him? And then you say no for him, to get rid of him completely. As it might have saved a lot of difficulty, if you hadn't made him Amalek lechatchila. Which means that ultimately something must be wrong with this Amalek that didn't necessarily need to be that way. He could have been okay, but he decided not to be okay. So Hashem said, oh, you decided really not to be okay, and you decided very definitely not to be okay. Because like we see, when the Eden came out of Mitzrayim, Amalek came at them just as they were coming up out of Mitzrayim, even before Matan Torah. In other words, there's something davka with Amalek that he wants to get at the Yidden and stop this whole in the process of the Jewish people to Matan Torah and to the greatness of the leaders of the world. You follow? So that would imply that Amalek represents some very profound inyan that's against the whole kavanah of Hashem. But he didn't necessarily have to be that way. I don't want to use the word bechira because I don't know how much bechira the Goyim really have. Yeah, but they have something. They have some in it. They could be better, or they could be worse. And he chose Davka to be worse, and he chose to be worse in a way that he would interfere with the messengers of Hashem in this world, the Hainu Yidden. And he would stop their message to the world. It says Hashem got to remember that, never forget that, remember it, and you're not allowed to forget. Yeah. So if I remember, then I'm not going to forget. There's a similar, there's a essay, and also a loiza said, there's a special inyan. Apart from you remembering, you've got to make sure you never forget. Because maybe it's two different sort of levels of the same basic thing. And you know the famous story, that there was a big Rav that he was also related somehow to our Rabbeim. I think it was the Teres Chesed. Yeah, he was the Teres Chesed. His name was Rabbi Shneur Zalman. I've forgotten his town name just right now. And he wrote a whole Shalos of Tshuvas called the Teres Chesed. So he was a very big poisik. So once some people came to him and they asked him a question. And they said, there's a suffix in the portion there, the Gabi Amalek, it's written Timche Zecher or Zecher. Is it written Zecher with a tziri, or is it written Zecher with a segel? And so therefore the minig in Lubavitch is to read both. You're familiar? with a fact. Yeah, Timche Zeicher, Zecher, Amalek, or somebody could read it. Timche Zecher Amalek, Zecher Amalek. So they asked the Torah's Chesed, what is the real right one? So he said to them, he said, Zecher, Zecher. He said, the Rike, the Timche. He said, what does it matter so much, Zecher or Zecher? The main thing is you got to Timche, Zecher. You got to get rid of them. Well, for that we say that the Ike is Papoel Mamish, Timche, Zecher, Amalek. Got to wipe them out. What has this got to do with what? So, let's just take I want to bring down now a quote from a Yid, a very, very great Yid that he lived in Tzfas for a while, but then he went to live in Tiberia. He couldn't stay in Tzfas for certain reasons. They went to live in Tiberia, and he's called the Shloh HaKodesh. You guys have heard of the Shloh HaKodesh?
Yeah.
And it's well known that the Shloh is a Rosh Tevis, how do you call it, an acronym of the Sefer that he wrote. He wrote a huge Sefer. It just covers everything. There's nothing in that huge Sefer. And he called it Shnei Luchos HaBrit. And certain great authorities felt that to call a Sefer Shnei Luchos HaBrit, I mean, the Shnei Luchos HaBrit we had to call it the two tablets. To call a Sefer Shnei Luchos HaBrit. But they didn't want to be pogeh in his unbelievable COVID, so therefore they said we'll call the Sefer Shloh. Shloh is Shnei Luchos HaBrit. Won't call it Shnei Luchos HaBrit, we'll call it Shloh. That's the minhag by Yidden, that he called the Sefer the Shloh. Anyway, the Shloh was an unbelievable great person. He's buried in Tiberia because he was at first in Tzfas when he came to Eretz. He wasn't always in Eretz, he was in Amsterdam. And he came to Tzfas near the end of his life, and then it didn't work out here in Tzfas, and he went to Tiberia. So the Shloh HaKodesh writes at the beginning of Parsha Vayikra, the Shloh HaKodesh writes an amazing sort of introductory sort of remark. It's quite a long remark, but it's I'll try to give you over basically what he says. The Shloh HaKodesh says like this, that we see that the Eibusher has commanded us on 3 different levels. And these 3 different levels are mentioned in the Sefer Yetzirah. You ever heard of the Sefer Yetzirah?
Yeah.
Sefer Yetzirah is a very, very, very primordial Kabbalah Sefer. And it is miyuchas to Avraham Avinu.
Right.
It's a Kabbalah b'yadenu that Avraham Avinu wrote the Sefer Yetzirah.
Yeah.
And the Sefer Yetzirah is divided into chapters, and each chapter has got Mishnayos. It's called Mishnayos. It's just little brief statements, one after the other, and all the holy heads of the great people, Meshet the Torah, have been breaking their heads to work out what are these little statements. However, at one place there, the Sefer Yetzirah says that everything is divided into 3 levels: Olam, Shona, Nefesh. So, what is Olam, Shona, and Nefesh? Olam, Shona, and Nefesh is a Rosh Tevis of the word Oshon. And what covered the mountain when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go up? Oshon. And what was in the Mishkan when he wanted to go in? Yeah, Oshon. So Oshon is a Rosh Tevis, Olam, Shona, and Nefesh. However, Olam means like place. It means the world the way it is. Begashmi is, or Kol Echad V'Echad V'Olam is Lefi Inyone HaMokim Shabato HaOlam. Because there's also Mokim in Olam HaBriya and other Olamas. Isn't there? If one of my really faithful Talmudim Dremel time, what's going to happen? Yeah. It's so that's olam. Shona is time. Shona means the passage of time. So Shona is a little bit edler and much more ruchnius than just place. Yeah, it's the passage of time, and there are different levels in time also. However, but generally speaking, it's the passage of time. And nefesh